Let's do an introduction to anatomy and answer the questions: what is anatomy, what are anatomical positions, and what are the basic anatomical movements. Hello everyone, my name is Emmanuel Incha and I'm a pharmacist. When we talk about anatomy, the word itself simply means upcut of the body. Now, as we can see, this image on your right shows a human being who has been cut up. Simply, anatomy means that upcut of the body. The definition of anatomy, we can say that anatomy is the study of body parts and their function relationship. Anatomy can be divided into three major sections, and these sections involves the microscopic anatomy, which involves the study of very small structures that cannot be seen by a naked eye, but rather require something like a microscope. This section of anatomy, the microscopic anatomy, can be divided into two parts. We have what we call cytology, of which is the study of cells by its definition. Now, cytology will involve the structure of a cell, the components of a cell, which are called cell organelles, how they function, how they are related to each other, and how the overall cell is related to other cells. Histology is the other part of microscopic anatomy, and histology is the study of body tissues, how they are related to each other in the different type of tissues which are in the human body. The other part of anatomy involves the macroscopic, or rather the gross anatomy. Now, this involves the study of large body structures. Example given are the heart, lungs, kidney, etc. This part of anatomy is divided into three parts or three sections. We have the regional anatomy, which involves the study of structures in one particular region. For example, I can talk about the abdomen. The abdomen is made up of the stomach, we have the small intestines, we have the large intestines, and we have other structures such as the liver, the gallbladder. Now, these structures, they function together towards the same goal, which is the breakdown of nutrition, absorption of nutrition, and also discard of waste. So this is what regional anatomy is all about. Systemic anatomy, on the other hand, is a study of systems. For example, we have the human immune system, we have the nervous system. So we study these structures, how they function, how an impulse is transmitted. Of course, that is the physiological part, but we study about the different type of nerves, how these nerves function, how the action potential is driven, and how it's transmitted. And we can talk about the immune system, of which tells us about how the body defends against foreign organisms and such. Surface anatomy, however, is the study of internal structures, basically internal structures. The last part of the major section of study of anatomy is the developmental anatomy, and developmental anatomy simply is the study of changes that occur to the body throughout its lifetime. Now, this involves changes from when you were born up to the point where someone dies. And the major part in developmental anatomy is embryology, which we are going to look at the development that occurs before birth. So before an organism is formed, there are some processes which need to occur. For example, the sperm needs to fuse with the female egg. After it fuses, develops into something else. So as we can see in this cycle, step by step, until it becomes a human being, until it becomes a fetus. So we are going to look at this in detail when we are talking about embryology. Now, structure level of the body, just like the way we talk about compounds, we know that an atom is a basic unit. An atom is a basic unit which cannot be broken down further into something else, and that is chemistry. But when it comes to biology, when it comes to anatomy, the structural level begins with a chemical. Now, a chemical, which is a combination of atoms to form a molecule. Now, these molecules, even though not proven, these molecules fuse together to form what we call the basic unit of life, which is a cell. So these cells, they have common characteristics, they differ in structure, and they also have different functions. Now, these cells, when they come together, they form what we call a tissue, of which a tissue is a group of cells which have the similar structure, and they are going to have the similar function. The major type of tissues that we are going to focus on are: number one, we have the epithelial tissue. We are going to talk about the connective tissue. We are going to talk about the muscle tissue and the nervous tissue. Now, these tissues, when they combine, when two or more tissues work together to form to perform one or more common function, okay, they form what we call an organ. So an organ is simply a combination of two or more tissues which are working together to perform one function or more. An example of organ, we can talk about the eye, we can talk about the skin, the stomach is an organ, the heart, which pumps blood, is an organ as well, the liver inclusive. So these tissues are going to combine to form what we call an organ. Now, an organ system is a group of organs of a common function. An organ system is a group of organs of common function. An example of an organ system we can give is a skeletal system. We know that skeletal system, they are involved in locomotion and they are involved in protection of internal organs, also in support of organs. Other organ system we can talk about the nervous system, the endocrine system, the muscular system, the cardiovascular system, the lymphatic system, respiratory system, and the digestive system. So these organs, they have a common function. At the end of the day, they need to achieve a common goal. So this is the structural level of the body, from a chemical level to an organ system. Systems of the body include: number one, the interglumerary system, which just talks about the outer covering of the body, which is the skin. It involves the hair, it involves the nails, it involves the glands, the sweat glands, of course, and nerves of the skin. Okay, so these things all together, they form the intergumentary system. The skeletal system is another system of the body which involves the entire bone system that protects and supports the body, and of course involves locomotion. So on my right here we have diagrams of the skin. As we can see, that's the skin. We are going to look at this skin in detail, each function of the gland, the function of these nerves, and whatever structures which make up the skin, and the type of tissue which make up the skin. Then we have the skeletal system. The skeletal system, the entire bone system that protects and supports the body. The muscular system is a system of muscles, like we have mentioned, like we have stated in the statement here. So looking at this human being, we can talk about these muscles there, we can talk about all types of muscles, and we know that the major function of muscles is to produce body movement. The nervous system consists of the brain, the sensory receptors, nerves, and the spinal cord. So under the nervous system, we are mainly going to focus on these four things: the brain, the sensory receptors, the nerves and the spinal cord. But most important, the brain and the spinal cord are what we are going to focus on mainly. So this nervous system is involved in controlling of hormones and stimulates the contraction of muscles and as well as gland secretion. So whenever there is secretion, whenever you feel it's hot and you have your sweat glands secreting that fluid on top, it means that that has been stimulated by the nervous system in order to produce that sweat which is being secreted. Other type of body system include the endocrine system, of which the endocrine system includes the secretion of hormones that regulate the body. We have the cardiovascular system. When you're talking about the cardiovascular system, we're simply talking about the heart. We are talking about the transport of blood through the body by the heart. We have the lymphatic or immune system, and these systems are involved in the protection of the body by attraction of foreign substances. So these they eliminate those foreign substances which have invaded the body. We have the respiratory system, which involves the exchange of gases. Okay, so the respiratory system is a system which involves in the supply of oxygen and removes carbon dioxide from the body. We have the digestive system, which involves the breakdown of food for absorption and removal of waste. We have the urinary system, which involves in the regulation of water, the regulation of electrolytes and acid-base balance in the body. So this system is mostly important in people maybe having high blood pressure. So it all comes down to the urinary system. The body needs to regulate the amount of water which is in the body. We need to regulate the amount of electrolytes which are in the body, and as well as the acid-base balance in the body. We have the reproductive system, which involves the production of babies. Yes. Okay, when we talk about anatomical position, different people had different phrases of how we can talk about these positions. So I can give, for example, back in the days when there was no specific anatomical position, it was hard to define the position in which the person is in. But then early in the days, it was universally stated that in order for us to define the anatomical position, someone needs to stand upright, face forward, arms open, just like what we are able to see in this skeletal figure. So anatomical position is simply the universal terms which are used to find a body part. Terms which are used to find a body part, or a part which, okay, you can just say terms which are used to find a body part. So when talking about anatomical position, a person needs to be standing in a position with the body erect, facing forward, feet slightly apart, arms hanging, and palms also facing forward. So this is what we mean. Now, the part going towards the body is called the superior region or the cranial region. So cranial because we have the brain on that part. So this means towards the head and end of the body, or higher or above. That's the superior or cranial region. We also have the part going to the legs below, which is called the caudal region or the inferior region, which means the opposite, away from the head or towards away from the head, lower or under. So if we cut in between like that, that part going down is inferior, the part going above is superior. Okay, can look at this diagram as well. So we have this red line, okay, cutting in between this we'll state it as a cadaver, or this diagram. Okay, now this line is called the medial line, and every organ found in between this line is called a medial organ. Now if we go slightly to the right or slightly to the left, that's called the lateral position. Now any organ found slightly to the left or to the right of the medial is called lateral. Okay, so anatomical terms are as follows. We have superior, which means towards the head and above, just like what we saw in that cadaver. We have inferior or caudal, which is away from the head and or below. We have the anterior. Now anterior or ventral means front of the body. Okay, anterior or ventral means in front of the body, in front of the body. Anything that's at the back or behind of the body is called the posterior or dorsal region. We have the medial, which is the midline which cuts the body in between equal halves. We have lateral, which is away from the midline, and any organ found away from the midline is said to be lateral or out. It's said to be lateral, which is away from the midline, or it's outer. Okay, so like I explained earlier, going away from the midline is lateral. So for example, the heart is not medial, the heart is lateral. So looking at this diagram, the heart is where I am pointing right now here. So the heart is lateral, it's not medial. And any organ or structure such as the sternum is medial since it's in between of the body. The spinal cord is medial as well. The nose is medial as well. Okay, other terms include the proximal, which is close to the origin. Okay, so proximal, for example, we have this diagram here, proximal. So any structure which is close to this elbow, I would say that from this elbow to where the palm of the hand is there. Okay, from there going up to there. Okay, so we can say that this part here, okay, this part here is proximal to the elbow because it's close. Then we can say that the palm of your hand is distal to the elbow, it's further away from the elbow. So proximal means close to the origin, distal means away or far from the origin. Other terms include superficial, which means towards the body surface. So any organ which is close to the body surface is called superficial. We can talk about superficial veins. Okay, so those superficial veins which you are able to see when you tilt your hand to see the veins. So there are some superficial veins, but there are also some deep veins, and those are called deep. So these terms are important for us to identify where the organ is in the body, and these terms are the universally accepted terms. Wherever you go, you are going to find the same terms. Okay, so these diagrams are just to illustrate what we are talking about. This we have right or left, which is lateral. We have the midline in between there, which is the medial. We have proximal, which is going towards, and distal, which is going away. We have the superior above, the region above. We have the inferior, the region below. We have the anterior, which is the ventral or in front, and we have the posterior, which is the dorsal and means at the back. More diagrams just for reference and understanding. The last part we are going to look at is the anatomical planes. And looking at this diagram, we have what we call the sagittal plane, and the sagittal plane is this plane which is cutting you in half, which is cutting you between the lateral region, okay, which is cutting you in between, going like that. So it's opposite to the medial. So the medial here is now called the frontal plane or coronal plane. It's this plane which is cutting you in half between right and left. So we have that frontal plane. We have the transverse plane which is cutting you between the middle of the stomach where the belly button is. So it's cutting you between the middle of the stomach. So we have these three anatomical planes. We have the sagittal plane, we have the frontal coronal plane, we also have the transverse plane. Sections, anatomical sections are relating to the anatomical planes. So a section is just a flat surface resulting from cuts through body structures. Now these sections are named according to plane on which the cut is made, and they include, so we have the transverse, we have the longitudinal, we have the frontal, and the mid sagittal section. So the flat plane, which is as a result of a cut. So for example, the frontal plane will result in a flat surface called the frontal section, and the longitudinal plane will result in a longitudinal section. So longitudinal plane, which is also called the frontal plane here, frontal plane. So frontal plane, that's the longitudinal section. Some basic terms of motion. So let's say, for example, you are trying to stretch out your hand. If you are trying to stretch out your hand, that's called extension. You are trying to extend your hand. And if you are trying to fold your hand, that's called flexation. So extending, you're trying to stretch out your hand, and flexation, you're trying to fold your hand. Okay, now let's say you're trying to perform surgery. There are two ways in which a person might sleep on that surgery table. Now there is what we call supine position, which is head facing up, and you are able to see all the anterior surface organs such as the lungs. So it means that you are lying, your body is the one which is touching, your back is the one which is touching on the ground, and the rest of the body is facing above. For example, your head is facing upwards. And we also have the prone position, like we have seen, lying on your stomach. So on this diagram, we have this patient who is lying on their stomach. Whether it's a she or it's a he, we don't know, but that person is lying there. Okay. So we have other terms which include adduction. So adduction simply is the opening of the hands or swinging of the hand, as we can see from this person, what he's trying to do, whether he's trying to fly or something, we don't know, but yeah, he's opening up his hands, okay, upwards, down. So that's called adduction. And other terms include pronation, which is the twisting of the hand. If we are twisting the hand in an anti-clockwise direction, that is called pronation, and if we are twisting the hand in a clockwise direction, that is supination. Okay, so we have supination, we have pronation, then we have lateral rotation, rotating your feet to the left, Then we have the medial rotation, which is rotating your feet to the right. I don't know if I'm getting that. Okay, so medial rotation, we are rotating, I would say, in a clockwise direction, and lateral rotation is the rotation in a counterclockwise direction, like what we are seeing what this person is doing. So these are example of terms of motion. These are examples of terms of motion: flexation, extension, supine, prone. We have pronation, supination. We have lateral rotation, medial rotation, adduction. So these terms are going to be important to know, maybe to understand a question or to understand the position of the organ where it is. Of course, we are talking also about the planes, inclusive, the directional terms. All these are going to work together towards one common goal. Body cavity involves or include parts like the dorsal cavity, which protects the nervous system, and this dorsal cavity is divided into two subdivisions. We have the cranial cavity, which is the brain, and we have the spinal cavity, which is the spinal cord. So all these structures are what we are going to study further in the future. We have the ventral cavity, which houses visceral organs and is divided into two subdivisions. We have the thoracic cavity, which is plural. We're talking about the lungs, which is mediastinum. We're talking about the heart, esophagus, and trachea. Then we have the abdominopelvic cavity. The abdominopelvic cavity includes structures like the structures which are found in the abdomen. So these structures include the stomach, the intestines, the spleen, the liver, etc. And if you remember correctly, this is an example of sectional anatomy or regional anatomy, so to say. It also includes the pelvic, which is the bladder, reproductive system, and rectum. Okay, so this marks the end of what anatomy is and what we are to expect in anatomy as a pharmacist. We need to it's important for us to understand the basic, because the basic is where everything begins. Like Rudolph mentioned in his statement, he said that the beginning of a disease is from a cell. If we understand a cell, then we can better understand how to diagnose a disease. So basics are important. From there we build up. So thank you everyone, thank you for listening. Please leave a sub to the channel, and if there are any questions, leave them in the comment section. I'll be glad to answer those questions. Leave a like, leave a sub, and watch out for next videos to come.